Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do a whole new entry, a whole new series here based on your new suggestions. Thank you so much for those suggestions. I see a bunch of new ones posted as well, so I can't wait to take a look at them and then start working on the rest of the videos. I'll probably end up doing maybe about 5 or 6 as a good starting point, and then seeing if there's more that are interesting. Maybe I'll save them for next time, or I'll just continue to do them at least a couple more videos. So this one, in this case, has to do with a very fascinating case. When I was reading the info on it, it almost played like Independence Day, the movie, with regards to the precursor of incidences, and then finally the actual incident itself. It almost read like a great thriller. So excited to share this one here for everyone. Y'all might have heard of this. I have not, so this was great to hear this information for the first time. And it has to do with this. It goes by several names, but it seems like the most common name is the Shag Harbour UFO Incident. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the interesting and fascinating info associated with this incident. And then also you can go to the spot to this very day, and hopefully, who knows, fingers crossed, you may actually catch a glimpse of the UFO. So what is, in this case, the Shag Harbour UFO Incident? Well, it has to do with this. You have to go back in time to one particular night there at a location called Shag Harbour, which is located in Canada, somewhere around Nova Scotia to be specific. It happened basically on October 4th, 1967, and there were a good number of incidences beforehand before it involved the actual big one, like the actual main incident itself. So here's what happened. Earlier that night at around 7 p.m., that's when there were I counted at least 4 separate reports of people citing what was considered aerial phenomenon. But this was described both in the air, people that saw, people that were flying in the air that saw this, people that were in the sea that saw this info, and then also people that were on the ground just in their homes, and some of them driving as well. So multiple incidences, multiple locations, in multiple environments. All of it led up to this. But yes, you go back at about 7:15 p.m., and then that's when the first one was reported. There was a flight that was happening en route to Toronto, near that location, and there was a captain by the name of Pierre Charbonneau, who was on a flight number 305. That's when he stated, he actually had to showcase to his co-pilot, a guy by the name of Bob Ralph, that if they looked out to their left-hand side of the aircraft, they saw what they described as an object that was tracking them, almost following them parallel to their location. Here's how he described it. It was a large rectangular object with a tiny set of lights almost trailing it afterward. Very, very bright, in fact, so easy enough to notice. And 4 minutes later, that's when they also saw almost like a silent explosion happen right next to it. No boom, no sound, nothing. It just happened, like a bright, large explosion that was completely void of any kind of sound. Afterward, there was another explosion as well. I don't know, though, if this was like an aircraft that had people, like, let's say, consumers within the back of the plane that also saw this, but definitely the pilots did. And when they saw the second explosion, that's when they noticed that there was this blue cloud that happened to hover around the object. More on that, though, in a minute, because what they saw could have led to the big incident afterward. And then, as far as another person that reported seeing something, there was a guy by the name of Daryl Dory, and he had his sister and his mother as well, just sitting on a front porch nearby that area too. That's when they saw a large object also maneuvering in and about the horizon. I don't know, though, if this was the same object that they saw, that the pilots saw, that I just mentioned, but it could be that it was yet a separate aircraft. That just adds so many more layers for it. At the very same time as that, if you go now, in this case, to the sea. So first we had an incident in the air. then we had an incident towards the ground, and now we have an incident happening in the sea. There was a captain by the name of Leo Howard Mercy. He was there, I guess, fishing or doing something out there with his crew. His crew consisted of about 20 fishermen as well. Late at night, they looked up, and then about 30 miles away, 30 kilometers away, that's when they saw what was considered a roughly rectangular formation of four lights, four objects off in the distance. They had no idea what it was, no clue, of what it, of any expectation that they were out there and they were seeing. They probably had the best vantage point too, considering they were so far out in the sea and it was just a dead of night. So they would have had nothing else playing tricks on them, like no city lights, nothing else as far as cars. It would just put them in the dead of night and then the beautiful starlit sky above them. And then that's when they saw this thing. Yeah, so much so, in fact, that the captain ended up calling one of the rescue coordination centers through his radio to try to find out any kind of explanation, and he filed an official report. In fact, you're looking at it here. This is the official report itself that he called in as far as what occurred. And then if you go to another sighting, this is interesting too because this happened more on a mass level. At all this very same time that these sightings were occurring, a little bit later at 10 p.m., people started to call in to the local radio station. They were stating that they saw a glowing object, something that was also moving across the horizon. Who knows if this was also the very same vessel that everyone else was reporting, or if this was yet again a separate flying object, something else that was just completely different. I'm of the opinion that there may have been multiple vessels, considering the wide range of what people saw. In one example, there was four bright lights. In others, there was just one glowing object. In others, there was a rectangular object with a string of lights. You see how there's different patterns with all these things. So if this was almost like, I don't know if I want to use the word invasion, but it could have been something along the lines where there were multiple vessels out there that starry night. But here's the big one. Here's how it all tied in. Remember I was mentioning about the pilots seeing an explosion, not just one, but two explosions happen with the rectangular object that they saw. Well, cut to about 11:20 p.m., and that's when near the waters there of Shag Harbour, 11 people saw what they described as a low-flying lit object head straight pretty much towards that harbor, and it was almost like straight out of the movies. They stated that they heard something that sounded like a bomb, that whistle sound that bombs make whenever they're thrown in the air. I don't know if that really happens, but you know how movies tend to make that type of sound. That's what they heard. And then also they heard a very strong whoosh. So whatever this thing was pretty big. It would have been enough to definitely rattle the airs to create that whoosh. And then finally, they heard a loud bang. I don't know if there was like a bang coupled by a splash, but they definitely heard something along the lines of a big bang. And so all of it led them to Shag Harbour. Immediately, people started to call in to the both the Canadian military and the I think there was a company there also by the harbor to try to let them know that, hey, there's something going on with that location. I think it was the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Military Police specifically, that was contacted about this. They were contacted not just because people thought that there was potentially a UFO that had trailed the air and it finally hit the water, but also because some people thought, hey, this could be a legitimate object, like this could be a plane, a small plane or something else that actually hit the waters and needs rescuing. People could be dying out there within those waters. So when that contact was made, it took about only 15 minutes, and then the first two officers showed up from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They were there, and they were able to start taking a look and finding out exactly what occurred. Apparently, though, and this is what makes it kind of frustrating, people saw from the crash this object that was initially floating in the waters. So something was there. People saw it. They saw it from their vantage point. They saw it in the middle of the lake. But what's frustrating is this thing, whatever it was, did not last long above water. It actually started to descend into the water itself. And then afterward, it was gone. It sunk and it disappeared completely from everyone's view. When I was reading this, it was so frustrating because here, if this thing would have been captured, if this thing would have been held from the waters and then eventually dragged into, in this case, the land, then you would have had, if this really was a UFO, a 100% bona fide object, in this case, unidentified flying object, something there that was finally proof. That's how close things came to this situation. I mean, that it was almost like within a hair's breadth, if but for the fact this thing actually disappeared into the sea. And if you're wondering, well, why, if it's down there, why not just go under the water and then try to find it? It's not like it's not going to go anywhere. It seems like it crashed. In fact, based on all the evidence beforehand, well, that's what happened. People eventually contacted the Canadian Coast Guard, and they were able to try to find this thing. There were divers as well, people that were there, again, not just on the UFO side, but on a rescue mission side, if people thought that this was truly like an aircraft, regular human aircraft of some sort that did not have that had survivors that did not have much chance left afterward. All this effort was done, and this happened over several days, but lo and behold, there was absolutely nothing found from this wreckage. No piece of any single kind. Can you believe that? Not a single evidence associated with this thing. And not just that, but there was other departments as well. The Royal Canadian Air Force was also contacted, and that was because they were asked point blank, like, was there any kind of missing aircraft, normal aircraft, in other words, civilian or military, that remained unaccounted for? And over several days an investigation was done, but no, nothing was found. Every single aircraft was accounted for, and so this remained what was considered a quote unquote a UFO report, and this was sent off as such to various departments about it, because once it was found out that there was nothing human that was pertaining to this crashed vehicle or whatever it was, then that's when it was considered a UFO report. But yes, over the next 3 days, there was an absolute combing of the entire area. All these departments all gathered there trying to comb the seafloor, but nobody found anything. Not a single trace of any kind of debris, any kind of object was ever found. Isn't that frustrating? Like, that was that close when it comes to having definitive proof of a UFO landing, or in this case, a crash. So, but ever since then, people have pretty much tried to find. I was reading information about it. It seems like almost like an anniversary type stuff. People will go and then they'll try to do their own kind of like amateur type stuff where they go underwater and then try to see if they in turn can find this missing UFO. And then at that location too, if you go there to this very day, you'll find as well, like there's like a little mini gift shop area too. There's also what's called the Shag Harbour Museum Center. They have all these nice little displays associated with the UFO crash, and then they also have the documentaries that have been made about it that you can see there. And what's really neat is this picture here. If you go out there, you'll see that they have a little, I don't know if it's called a gazebo, but something that you can go out there either in the day or at night and then try to see from the vantage point of where the UFO crashed. You can try to see if the UFO ever returns, like if it ever comes out of the water. So who knows? Those of you that are near that area, if you want to take a chance, go by and you might be able to see this UFO pretty much come out of the waters if you're lucky enough. Who knows? Maybe it already has, but otherwise there continues to be no evidence of this UFO ever being found. But what do you guys think about this incident, this Shag Harbour UFO incident? Anybody from that location? There's bound to be one of the more popular ones, especially by that area. So if anybody has gone there, maybe you've seen the lake itself or whatever the body of water is. Maybe you have more personal experience on it from seeing that place. Please post those comments below. That'd be really, really great to hear. So But yes, hopefully, maybe one day in the future, there will be something in terms of this UFO coming out of the waters. And if so, maybe there'll be finally documented evidence associated with it too. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.